Of course. Here is section 1 of your script, 500 words minimum, direct and to the point, written with quality and clarity, following the tone of a romantic infidelity story without any fluff or unnecessary repetition. My husband Daniel had been growing more distant over the last few months. Long work trips, missed calls, half-hearted goodnights. I'd convinced myself it was just stress, that he'd eventually come back to me, not just physically, but emotionally. But the silence between us had become louder than any argument we could have had. It was a Thursday afternoon when he called. He sounded unusually casual. "Hey, babe. Listen, my friends Liam, Marcus, and Ryan are coming to town. Just for the weekend. They need a place to crash. I told them you wouldn't mind."
He didn't ask.
He told me. And even though I hesitated, I smiled through the phone and said, "Of course." What else was I going to say? No, I hadn't seen them in years. I remembered them vaguely from our wedding, his loud, joking best friends from college. But that was 5 years ago. Back when Daniel still held my hand at dinner, kissed my forehead when I cried, noticed when I changed my hair. By Friday evening, I had the house spotless. 3 guest beds made, fridge stocked, wine chilling. It felt good to prepare something. To be useful. Needed. They arrived just after 7 p.m. Marcus was the first to hug me. Tall, lean, more refined than I remembered. "You haven't changed at all," he said with a smile that lingered a second too long. Liam was all charisma, compliments, laughter, charm. Ryan, quieter but observant, carried their bags and offered to help with dinner. Dinner that night was filled with nostalgic stories from their college days, most of which I'd already heard from Daniel. But the way they told them, laughing, jostling, animated, it brought a strange energy to the house I hadn't felt in months. I watched them from across the table, noting the differences between the men they were now and the boys Daniel used to talk about. At one point, Liam turned to me mid-story and said, "You know, Daniel always said you were out of his league. Seeing you now, I get it." I laughed, brushing it off as playful banter, but I felt a flush creep into my cheeks. After they went to bed, I stayed up washing the last few dishes. I could hear muffled voices from the guest rooms, Marcus's deep laugh, Ryan's soft murmur. It felt oddly comforting, like I was part of something again. Daniel hadn't called all day, not even a text. I checked my phone again just to be sure. When I finally went to bed, I lay there listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, the creaks of the house adjusting, the soft thud of footsteps in the hallway. I told myself it was nothing. They were just guests, friends. But even then, part of me knew something had shifted. And not just in the house. In me. Would you like me to continue with section 2 next? Of course. Here's section 2, minimum 500 words, continuing the story directly, without fluff, and keeping the emotional progression and tension consistent. The next morning felt different. I woke up earlier than usual, even before the sun fully came through the curtains. I could hear the faint sound of laughter downstairs. When I walked into the kitchen, Ryan was already there, barefoot, making coffee. He turned, smiled, and handed me a mug without asking how I liked it. "Figured you'd be up early. House like this doesn't run itself." His tone was warm but not casual. I noticed the way he looked at me, soft, attentive. The kind of look I hadn't gotten from Daniel in months. Liam came in next, followed by Marcus, who had just gotten out of the shower, his hair wet, shirtless, towel slung low on his hips. He caught me looking and gave a quick smirk before disappearing into the guest room. We spent the afternoon together. They insisted I sit while they cooked. Liam took control of the grill outside, Ryan chopped vegetables beside me at the kitchen island, and Marcus moved around like he'd always lived here, handing out drinks and adjusting music. It wasn't just about charm anymore. It was attention. Focus. I wasn't invisible. They looked at me when I spoke. They asked questions, waited for the answers. When I laughed, they leaned in closer. Daniel used to do that. But lately, he barely looked up from his laptop. Later that evening, Marcus and I ended up alone on the patio. The others were inside, watching something. He leaned against the railing, sipping a glass of wine, his eyes on the backyard, voice low. You know, Daniel's lucky. Always was. We used to joke that he'd never settle down. Then he met you, and just like that, he changed. There was a pause. I wasn't sure what to say. He's been busy lately, I admitted. It sounded weak, even to me. He nodded slowly, then turned to face me fully. You deserve more than someone who's just busy. You deserve someone who sees you, really sees you. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in the living room alone, staring at the cold fireplace. My phone buzzed. Daniel. A short text. Working late. Don't wait up. That was it. I didn't respond. Instead, I replayed the day in my mind. How Ryan's hand had brushed against mine more than once. How Liam had fixed my necklace when the clasp came loose. How Marcus looked at me like I was something worth protecting. It was subtle, unspoken, but unmistakable. I'd been faithful in every way for 5 years. Even when Daniel grew cold, even when the loneliness crept in, I held the line. But now, the line felt blurred. Not because of them. Because of me. Because I hadn't realized how badly I needed to feel seen again. I heard a door creak behind me and footsteps approaching. I turned, half expecting Daniel out of habit. But of course, it wasn't him. It was Marcus. And he didn't say a word. Would you like me to continue with Section 3 next? Of course. Here's Section 3. Continuing the story with precision and emotional intensity, minimum 500 words, no repetition, focused and direct. Marcus stopped a few steps away, watching me like he was waiting for permission to speak. I didn't give it. I didn't need to. He sat beside me, close but not touching. The silence between us was louder than anything he could have said. I could feel his breath. He glanced at my hands, clasped tight in my lap. I'm not trying to make things complicated, he said. His voice was calm, but not casual. But you're not okay. Anyone can see that. I turned toward him, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't guard my face. I didn't pretend. What do you want from me? I asked. He shook his head slowly. It's not about what I want. It's about what you deserve. And if Daniel can't see that, someone else will. I should have gotten up. I should have ended the conversation right there. But instead, I looked at him, really looked, and realized how long it had been since someone simply looked back like that. Without judgment. Without expectations. Just with presence. He reached for my hand, and I let him. His touch was firm, warm. Familiar, somehow. My heart was racing, but I didn't pull away. I can't, I whispered, but it sounded weak, unconvincing. I know, he replied. But you want to. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. What happened next didn't feel reckless. It felt inevitable. I didn't feel like I was cheating. I felt like I was waking up from a deep, slow numbness I hadn't even noticed creeping over me. His kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was quiet, patient, like he understood I needed more than just touch. I needed to feel. The rest happened without words. It wasn't wild. It wasn't loud. It was slow, deliberate, and heartbreakingly gentle. I cried once, quietly, and he didn't ask why. He just held me. When I woke up before sunrise, I was still beside him. I slipped out of the room silently, trying to push down the guilt already forming in my throat. I avoided the mirror in the hallway. I didn't want to see what I'd become. Downstairs, Ryan was already up, sitting at the dining table, scrolling his phone, eyes tired. When he saw me, he didn't say anything, but something shifted in his face. Recognition. Maybe disappointment. By noon, the air had changed. Liam was quieter, less charming. Ryan was polite, distant. Marcus didn't make eye contact. Whatever unspoken tension had been building was now real, heavy, undeniable. I tried to act normal, offering lunch, making coffee, folding blankets. But every action felt like a cover for something shameful. Every silence was filled with questions no one dared to ask. I checked my phone, avoiding the others, and that's when I saw it. Daniel had messaged. Flight changed. Coming home tonight. Just 6 words. but they hit harder than anything Marcus said. Harder than anything that happened in that room. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't just someone's wife anymore. I was someone with a secret I couldn't take back. Would you like me to move on to Section 4 next? Of course. Here is Section 4, minimum 500 words, completing the story with emotional resolution and clarity, maintaining focus, and avoiding repetition. Daniel walked through the door just after 8. He looked tired, suitcase in one hand, a small bag of takeout in the other. Brought your favorite, he said, like nothing had changed. I forced a smile and took the bag, hands steady despite the storm inside me. He noticed the wine glasses in the sink, the extra coats by the door. They still here? He asked casually. They're packing up, I said. My voice sounded normal. Too normal. He walked over and kissed the top of my head. Thanks for hosting. They said you were incredible. Said you really took care of them. I couldn't speak. I focused on unpacking the food, aligning the containers one by one. His presence felt foreign now. Too late. Too familiar in the wrong ways. The guys came downstairs a few minutes later, each with a bag in hand. Polite goodbyes, fake laughs, nothing real. Marcus didn't look at me. Ryan offered a half smile. Liam gave a quick hug, too quick. And then they were gone. Daniel stretched out on the couch, kicked his shoes off. Maybe we should take a trip soon. Just us. I've been distracted, I know. But I miss you.
He meant it.
That was the worst part. He actually meant it. But he was saying it too late, after something irreversible had already happened. I nodded but didn't answer. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror, toothbrush in hand, staring at a woman I barely recognized. She looked composed, hair in place, makeup clean. But I could see it in her eyes. Something had cracked. Not broken, just shifted. I climbed into bed beside him, listening to his breath slow, waiting for the familiar sound of sleep. When it came, I stared at the ceiling and replayed everything, moment by moment. Not the kiss. Not the body. Just the feeling. Of being wanted. Of being known. The next morning, he was back on his laptop, already replying to emails, already slipping back into distance. Whatever he'd promised the night before had faded. Just like always. We ate breakfast in silence. No mention of the weekend. No mention of what I had done, or what he had failed to see. Just scrambled eggs and headlines. Around noon, I received a message from an unknown number. I didn't need to open it to know it was Marcus. I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. I wasn't going to run away. I wasn't going to confess. There was no resolution coming. Only this. A truth I'd have to live with. Not because I didn't love Daniel anymore, but because somewhere along the way, I stopped being part of the version of us that mattered. People think infidelity is about the act, the moment, the mistake. But it's not. It's about the silence that comes before. The thousand small ways we disappear from each other. Until one day, someone notices you've been gone a long time and decides to see you anyway. And once you've been seen like that, you don't go back. Not really. Even if you stay. Let me know if you'd like a video narration draft or audio-ready formatting next.